Hello and welcome. In this lecture, we're going to be making our very own scene component for the grabber, and we're going to print out its rotation so that we can see that it is indeed attached to the camera and the camera's rotation is affecting its rotation. Let's dive in and see how this works. Now, if you remember from seeing the demo, I would like to have a little statue in one of these cells and to allow us to pick it up and take it over to this alcove for placement. Now, the problem here is that I don't have that statue and I don't have a way of even knowing if I am pointing at it when I'm trying to pick it up. So that is what we're going to aim to try and solve in the next few lectures. So first of all, let's put a statue in place for us to use. So I'm going to open the cell door a little bit. So let's click on one of these cells. I'm going to go down to the door and I'm just going to rotate it nicely open so that we can get in. The next thing I'm going to do is it's very dark in here. So I'm going to put a new spotlight here. So let's go to the quickly add button, go to lights and find a spotlight, drag that in to our scene and drag it up the wall a little bit so that basically we are alerting the player to the fact that, hey, there's something of interest over in this corner that you might want to pay attention to. Then we're going to go to select the medieval dungeon folder and search for statue. And you can see we've got a golden one and we've got a stone one. I'm going to go for actually probably the gargoyle here. And I need to give it some sort of something at the bottom because I know that this mesh has a hole in its bottom. So if we go and turn it upside down, it's going to look awful because it doesn't actually have a back side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this gargoyle and I'm going to turn it, well, I'm going to actually add a mesh underneath it. So we're going to look for some dirt mesh, and you can see I've got a little bit of dirt here that I'm going to just take and slap on to the existing gargoyle statue actor. So it's dirt mound, and you can see it's absolutely huge in comparison, but don't worry, we can fix that with a little bit of scale tools. So this dirt mound, so I'm going to go ahead and scale this locked in the details pane. Perhaps I'll start with 0.1 and see how small that is, and let's actually rotate the entire gargoyle actor so that we can see properly what we're doing. Let's have a look at that dirt mound. The dirt mound needs rotating by 180 degrees, and then let's use the scale tool to make it a little bit bigger. I'm just going to finesse these figures a little bit using the details pane now. I'm squashing it right flat with the scale in the Z and finessed it, I think, just enough that it looks like there's a bottom to that. And now we can put this gargoyle rotated 90 degrees again and try and place it somewhere in the corner under this spotlight. So that's the aim, for us to get hold of this mesh. But how are we going to do it? We're going to need a special component in order to do this. And we could use an actor component, but in this case, it's actually going to make more sense to use a scene component. Let's see why. Let's go ahead and go to the root of our content folder, clear out the search, and open up our BP player. And let's open up the full blueprint editor. And what we want to do is essentially to have something that tracks around when we're moving our first person camera. So as I play in here, you can see that I am looking all around and my camera is also looking all around. So what I want is something that points in the same direction as my camera. So the logical thing is to attach a component to this camera which would allow it to automatically rotate with that first person camera and always be pointing, always having its forward vector pointing in the forward direction of the camera. So that's what we're going to do, and that is exactly where we need a scene component, a component that can attach to other scene components and has a transform, has a location, rotation, and scale. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to go to the add button in the components, but we could do this another way.
way, we could also go to our content drawer, click on C++ classes folder and hit add new C++ class. And then what we can do is we can go and scroll down to where you see it says scene component. So we're going to make a new scene component rather than an actor component. And we're going to go ahead and hit next. Now we're going to call this the grabber because it's a component that's going to be eventually responsible for figuring out what to grab and then grabbing hold of it so that when we move, the grabber takes it with us. So we're going to go ahead and create this class, which takes us over to Visual Studio Code with a grabber.h and a grabber.cpp. And you can see that it's created a uGrabber, again with this U prefix for components, and it inherits from the uScene component. So that's how we know it is a scene component, again with that inheritance being the is a relationship. If we went over to the mover.h, you could see that the inheritance is actually from uActor component. So that is a uActor component. But otherwise, it looks exactly the same. It's got a begin play, it's got a tick component, and that's because actually a scene component is an actor component. It just adds some more functionality on top. So now that it's a scene component, we should be able to go over into our editor, go to our BP player, and from here, go to add and look for the grabber. And the grabber, now you see I had my first person camera selected, so it automatically added the grabber as a child component of that first person camera. So I'd like to challenge you to print the grabber rotation. The way we're going to do this is to get the component rotation this time, not the actor's rotation, because the important thing is actually how this particular component is rotated because it's attached to the camera. We're going to convert it to a string using the toCompactString function of the F rotator this time, because we're not using an F vector for rotation. It does actually have a toCompactString function, however. Then we're going to print that out using the UE log. Remember, you put a star before a string for strange reasons. And then we're going to compile it, test it out, and see, does it change the rotation? Does it move with the camera? Pause the video and have a go. Okay, welcome back. So we're going to be printing this out in tick. I didn't mention that, but hopefully you figured that out. And what we're going to do is, first of all, create an F rotator. Just going to store my rotation. And then we're going to get component rotation, parentheses, and then from this we need to get an F string, which is going to be the rotation string, which we're going to do by doing the my rotation dot to compact string, parentheses. Now we're going to type ulog, and we're going to have the grabber rotation %s, and then we're going to remember the star before our rotation string, like so. Now let's go ahead and compile this. And it looks like that was successful, which is always nice to see. And then we're going to go ahead and hit play and have our output log docked in the layout so that I can see it at all times. You can see the rotation is indeed being printed out. And as I move up, you can see my pitch, the P, is changing. As I turn from side to side, the yaw is changing. But at no point is it kind of tilting from side to side, which would be the roll. So that's why in the compact representation, the roll is always set to 0. So you can think of it as roll, pitch, and yaw like in an airplane. So it does look like this is updating correctly as I would expect it to with the camera, and I'm very happy with that result. Great stuff. So we've seen how we can create our own scene components, how we can attach them to stuff, and how they have their own notion of rotation, location, and scale. Let's see you in the next lecture.